This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
Hello, this is Scott Wells for the magicwordpodcast.com. This week's episode is going to be a little bit long, so I'm going to be short in the front, like a mullet haircut that's short in the front and long in the back. I guess they say business in front and party in back. When we were in Las Vegas for the Society of American Magicians convention here earlier this year, I had a chance to sit down with Stan Allen to talk about conventions in particular, and not just the Magic Live, but also about conventions in general, talking about the history and where we are now and perhaps where we might be going. And this is a very enlightening conversation, and Stan certainly is opinionated and has the right to have these opinions because of his experience in hosting one of the largest conventions, if not currently the largest convention in the United States today. That is largest magic convention. Well, he has some very interesting things to point out here, and rather than telling you in advance, let me just let you listen to him here this week while we were there in Las Vegas. So please welcome my guest, Mr. Stan Allen, here on The Magic Word. Well, today we are going to be speaking with a convention impresario. How about that? A magic convention impresario. Have you ever been called that before, Stan?
I don't believe so.
Oh, there you go. Well, there's first time for everything. Someone who has been well known, of course, for the publication business, and for 25 years had the one of the widest selling magic magazines in the known universe was Magic Magazine, and now his entire year and attention is spent focused on creating Magic Live experiences annually here in Las Vegas. We are in Vegas right now, getting a chance to talk with Stan about his convention, but more importantly, it's not just about his convention, but it's about conventions in general. This has been a podcast a long time coming, and I can people have asked me about it because of my background of organizing conventions and serving in every kind of position possible. Plus, I was a convention editor for Magic Magazine for a long number of years, but now that Stan is doing this on a full-time basis, I think he has a very good perspective, and this would be something that I think it would be of interest not just for organizers, but for attendees or maybe those who have never attended their first convention, because we want to get into a lot of stuff, like about the history of conventions and where they have come from, where they are now, and where we're going to be going. So stick with this. I think you need to strap in for this one, because there will be a lot of interesting stories and great information imparted here by my friend and yours and those of the magic community in general, and everybody who wants to be on the cover of his magazine. Please welcome Stan Allen. Hey, Stan. How are you, Chief?
Welcome to Las Vegas, Scott.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Great to be here. So, so I'm going to be on the next cover of Magic Magazine.
Absolutely. I'm telling everybody that. Yeah. they were going to be on the next cover. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Dang, we could have just gone one more issue.
That's right, yeah. Well, now you're a convention organizer, and people will be asking you about how do I get on there. But we'll get to that. I don't want to jump the gun, because I want to talk about the conventions in general as we've seen them. It seems like today that we have a lot of fewer attendees. Specifically, like when I was president of the Texas Association of Magicians in 2000, that was the last time we had over 1,000 registered. And since then, it's been dwindling by hundreds per year.
So you caused that
dwindle. I caused a tsunami to stop. Yes, and it's been downtrending such that we may get about 300 people or so, but it used to be that we would have more than the national conventions, but the national conventions are suffering then as well. But going back, do you know when they had the very first magic convention, or what's kind of its history? Do you know anything about that?
My good friend Mike Caveney, who's a historian, and who also happens to own the Egyptian Hall Museum. The very first magic convention, he tells me, was in 1926, thrown by Durbin, who then owned Egyptian Hall, and it was held in Egyptian Hall. And that was an IBM event.
But the Egyptian Hall, was that in Nashville?
Oh, gosh, now you got me. I don't think it was. I think it was in
Ohio?
Alabama, somewhere down there. Oh, great. Okay, we're starting off by not knowing what we're talking about. So for any of the four readers that are still with us, or listeners that are still with us.
You're still living in that age.
We know something, just not that.
Yeah. But so 26 was the first one.
Sure. So I guess IBM will be coming up on 100 years of doing magic conventions in the near future.
That's right.
Yeah.
And boy, that is amazing that we're going to be having that. Well,
So, Scott, how was that first convention?
well, as I remember it, we got there by horse and carriage. And I know, for an example, that the TAOM got started as a Texas Association of Magicians got started as a picnic. In which that they kind of had in someone's backyard, and then it got bigger. Same thing, I think, same thing, but like the 4F convention that Eddie Fector just had people around the table, and said, let's do this again next year.
Conventions start for all different reasons. Magic Live started as a celebration of the 10th anniversary of Magic Magazine.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't necessarily to sell magazines. I mean, it was just kind of a celebration, saying, hey, let's get people together who are readers.
Well, the idea, I looked at 10 years of magazines, and to me, it was a big accomplishment. And I looked at Sphinx and Genie and other magazines that had accomplished 10 years. And what did they do on their 10th anniversary issue? And most of them did very little. They didn't do anything special. Bill Larson Sr. had, he gets a get-out-of-jail-free card. That was when the war ended. World War II ended right on that time frame, and so he talked about that. And it looks like there might have been something else, and then that paragraph was almost pasted in at the end, that the war is over. Thank God the war's over.
Right.
And so nobody did anything. And I used to drive my kids to school, different times, different kids, and my son and I always talk on the way to school, and he was a good brainstormer. And so I said, hey, in a year or so, year and a half, we have our 10th anniversary. How should we celebrate it? And we came up with 3 ways to celebrate it. And one was to do a book.
Okay.
One was to throw a big party. And one was to have a traveling display that Magic Magazine would send around to all the other conventions if they'd give us a room. We would set up this display, and it would be 10 years of magic. And while it would be sponsored by Magic Magazine, it would be the last 10 years of history through the pages of this magazine.
That makes
That's
sense.
the idea of the tour. Ultimately, the party became the convention. The touring display became our first museum at that convention. And we had planned on doing a book called the 10 Years of Magic. And
So kind of doing all 3.
Right. We ended up planning doing all 3. And then about 6 months out of the convention, between putting out those days 18 magazines, 12 magics and 6 juggles, and throwing this convention, the team was just stretched way too thin, and we had to give up something. So we gave up the book.
Did you not have somebody who was dedicated to working the convention, or was that just an additional job they had in addition to?
You would assume that would mean that I'm a good manager and that I plan these things well out in advance and organize every little detail.
Right.
And you would be kind of wrong on that. And everybody did a little bit of everything at the time.
And it turned out to be great. And then what I liked also is how that every convention looked different from the next. And like you said before, that people like to come and see you walk the tightrope to see if you're going to fall or not.
That's a Bill Smith expression.
Oh, is that right?
We come here to watch you walk on the tightrope. And I remember asking him, does it matter if I make it to the other side? And he said, oh, no. Just fun to watch you walk. You fall, you make it, doesn't matter. Just fun to watch. And you know what?
Like watching NASCAR.
That's exactly what I would love our customer base to be developed for. We try. That we're going to be experimental. And that one guy said to me, when I said to him, we experiment. He says, well, I don't want to pay to watch you experiment. I don't want to be there when you strike out. And somebody on our staff said, well, if you're not going to be in the room when Stan strikes out, then you're not going to be in the room when he hits a home run. And he hits a home run occasionally, too. He strikes out sometimes, but he hits a home run. And that's sort of the nature of what we're trying to make Magic Live, that you come there and there is an experimental aspect of it at all times.
Right.
But that's about us. What else?
Well, it's still about conventions. The way that we talked about how that they started and they were small, then they had grown because, like with the IBM and the S.A.M, it was for the membership, and as the membership grew, then you had to have some place for them to come. I assume for a convention just for community, basically.
Well, you started at TOM. I started at PCAM, Pacific Coast Association of Magicians, and I remember that they had about 250, 300 people that would go to every single convention.
Didn't matter if it was Blue Dog, it was booked. I mean, they go
drove
just
to
friends,
it.
family.
It was up the coast, down the coast. People that's where they saw their friends
every year.
That's where they spent their vacation. And I think that's why conventions started in the early days. They talk about pros going to conventions. because all year long they're playing different cities, traveling the world, and long-distance phone calls, not very practical. You didn't know where to call or where people were. You sent letters, but they took months to catch up with people. And yet they would all come together for the such and such magic convention and see all of their friends.
Yes.
And I think that's the nature. First of all, magic is a communal art. A communal art meaning I think we're more communal than jugglers or comics, dancers, and I think part of the reason for that is that magicians are the only people who can really appreciate how good another magician is. Because you can do the most fantastic sleight of hand, center deals and everything else for this table of people, and I can come up and do an invisible deck. And they might end up thinking I'm the better magician, which I'm not by far.
Right.
So for jugglers, two jugglers can meet. Say, you're a juggler, I'm a juggler. What can you do? I says, well, I can do 5 balls. Yeah, I can do 7 clubs. Well, right away you understand where they're at on their path.
Right.
And magic doesn't quite have that. Because you can go to the magic shop and buy 5 really good tricks. And if you're a charming person and go out in front of people, you can make that an interesting show.
That's right.
And so I think magicians appreciate other magicians, and thus we hang out with each other a lot more. And an extension of that natural effect is that we go to conventions, we gather, we have clubs, and we gather. However,
and we share.
And but it's changed.
Yeah.
It's changed.
How so?
Well, take magazines as an example.
Okay.
Everybody says, oh, young people, they don't read. Yeah, that's bull.
Yeah.
It isn't. They read more now. My kids read more than I read. They just do it
digitally.
They do it differently. Magazines used to be efficient. You have a new trick. You're a brand new magician. You want to get your name out. You send it into a magazine. You send a couple tricks into a magazine, and pretty soon somebody says, hey, that kid's kind of interesting. We got to get them for our convention. And then some book publisher says, hey, I'll publish your book. And now you're an established person. It was an efficient way to do it. You put out a product, and you're going to advertise. Well, are you going to get a mailing list and put all the flyers in an envelope and put the postage on them and send them all off? Or are you going to send an ad into a magazine, and it's going to hit thousands and thousands of people? It was efficient.
Yeah, right.
Well, guess what?
It's just the other way around now.
The internet changed both of those things.
Yeah.
That's not how you get your name put out as a new magician. You put your trick online and you have a podcast or you have a blog or whatever it is put out.
Right.
And you're going to advertise. You build yourself a mailing list and you push a button and you get to all these people for free. So magazines became inefficient. They were no longer the efficient way of doing things. And thus they're dying.
And you're not speaking just for magic magazines, because I know that you used to attend these conventions for other magazines as well. Publishing conventions, sure.
No, it's around the world.
It's endemic.
Magazines are already over the cliff.
Yeah.
Conventions are pushing back, magazines are pushing back, trying to be pushed over the cliff. Newspapers are already pretty much done, and magazines are following suit. And
newspapers are shrinking, not only in circulation, but even in size.
Of course not.
Newspaper tear, you got a smaller
pretty
paper.
Pretty soon I won't be doing a Gene Anderson newspaper tear because people go, what's he holding?
Well, it's just like a phone book. You're trying to do a phone book prediction. It's like, this is a local phone book. Well, the kids are going, what?
Remember Eddie Telek, the trade show magician? Sure. Paul Gertner was friends, and he did an interview with him. And there was a quote in the first draft where Eddie Telek says, well, but in 25 years, there won't be card tricks. And Paul said, well, what do you mean? And he said, simple. People are starting to play video. They do digital poker, digital this and everything else.
He's recognizing that.
In 25 years from now, you won't even have a deck of cards. Well, decks of cards are more popular now than they've ever been, but they're almost a throwback. The gambler goes...
Well, now you can do card tricks with an app.
Yes, of course. But anyway, conventions now, same scenario. It used to be, this is all me just thinking about it, so I'll put up the disclaimer right at the beginning.
Okay.
There's no gospel being spoken here. I wouldn't chisel any of these, but just from my viewpoint, from my desk, it used to be you would say, I want to throw a convention. And you'd find a property or a city and a property that you're going to throw it on. You make a deal. You set the dates. You then call up a couple people and you get your names booked, a few names booked, and you send in an ad to the magazines. And now you sit back and you wait for registrations to come in.
Right.
And most of us will look at your list of people and say, oh, my gosh, I've heard about this person. I've never seen this person. And even if they were well known and they'd done television, if I didn't happen to watch that particular show. There was no way back then to record the shows.
Right.
And so you went to a convention a lot to see people you had never seen before.
That's true.
Well, you can take a list of all the people appearing at a magic convention now, and if you haven't seen them already, Google them and you can watch their acts. So magicians are not coming any longer to see somebody they've never seen before. So the game has changed.
Just like with brick and mortar magic shops, because that they can go online to see how a trick is actually performed. You don't need to go to a shop to see a demonstrator demo that for you. You can see it and order it online without ever going to a real brick and mortar. So I can see a similarity of what you're saying there. That's
There's
interesting.
parallels to the way I saw a magazine article when the internet was really just
In its infancy.
we were just really getting the feel for it. And the big bold print on the cover of the magazine. Yes, the internet is going to change how you do business. No, nobody can tell you how yet.
Yeah.
Bought the magazine, sat on the plane and read it. The best part of the magazine was the headline.
Yeah.
And they basically just couldn't tell you. But who knew it was going to affect every aspect of business today?
It's like in The Graduate, like the future of plastics. You know,
Exactly. Every
you don't know what it is, but it's going to...
every aspect of our life. It's just, you want to cripple a country, take away their internet.
No kidding.
You
That's
know,
my greatest
as we're
fear.
seeing how vulnerable we are
right.
to hacking and everything else.
right.
And so it has changed everything. And so today, I think there's still magic conventions that are working off that formula, that are still saying, well, we have a place, we have some dates, we booked some really good talent.
Right.
And the other thing, the more conventions there are, as a convention producer, we're all looking for the same thing. The really great talent with a good name that will draw people in, yet nobody's seen them.
Right.
Well, good
Getting
luck.
be fewer and fewer.
Yeah, that's a unicorn is what you're looking for right there.
That's a good analogy too. Yeah.
Yeah, and so somewhere in this, when I became a professional convention booker, and had more time and didn't have those 12 pesky deadlines to take care of,
Staring in the face every month. Yeah.
I started thinking more and more about, why do people go to conventions? And I came up with the 4 C's why people come to.
Okay.
Now, Charlie Fry has added a 5th one. I'll give you that later.
Okay. What are they?
But they're not in any particular order. The first one is a city.
Okay. Good point.
You know, sometimes there's a city, like Austin is one of those cities.
Destination
San
city.
Francisco,
Yeah.
Destination city I want to go to.
Right.
And so there's the city.
Yeah.
And part of that, though, is that how convenient is that city? How good does that city sound? Because we live in a brag Facebook world today. And if you're telling all your friends you're going to Podunk, Iowa, which I don't even know, is there a Podunk, Iowa or not? We pick on it.
If
so
we
whatever
do.
it is, my apologies to Podunk, Iowa. But like in Vegas, somebody said, oh, Pahrump has some great places to live. I said, I couldn't live in a city called Pahrump. It might be wonderful people. I just can't be Pahrump. You know, gosh.
Isn't that where the Bunny Ranch is?
I don't know, Scott. I wouldn't know the answer to that. And even if I did know the answer to that, I would deny knowing the answer to that.
But you're right. That's a strange name. But
yeah, so
I
anyway,
understand what you're
Podunk,
saying.
Iowa.
Yeah.
And you don't want to tell your friends you're going to Podunk, Iowa. You want to tell your friends that you're going to
Las Vegas.
Or you're going to
glitzy.
New York City.
That's
or
right, Chicago.
Chicago. I mean, magic places. Austin is that
Austin's
kind of
great,
place.
exactly.
It's got that weird reputation.
Exactly.
It's great. So city is really important for bragging, for easy to get to.
Orlando.
And then also
San Francisco.
what's around the place. What else is there to do at
Like
the
in
place?
Orlando, that's a great destination city with Disney World and everything.
Okay, now that's an interesting point. I don't think it's a great destination city.
Because you have too many things competing?
No, because the things that you go to do are all-day things to do.
You just don't go and have dinner someplace, or you go all day with your
You
tickets.
go all day. It's not like
Sure,
Las Vegas, where in the
sure.
middle of Magic Live, you look at it, or any other convention in Las Vegas.
I'm going to go see a show.
I'm going to go see Matt King at 3 o'clock here. Well, what am I missing? I'm missing this lecture and this. I can do that and slip over there. Where you're in Orlando and you say, gee, I want to go to Animal Kingdom today.
There's
Do you
the
buy
day.
a $100 ticket and go for 2 hours and come back? Also, this is just me, but when I had kids, small kids, I still have kids, but when I have small kids, if I had said, guys, I'm going to a magic convention in Orlando, I'll see you in a week. That wouldn't have flown at my house.
It's not going to fly.
Yeah,
Right.
think me walking a plank off into the swimming pool, because that is not going to work. And so for me to go to a magic convention in Orlando, it's a whole bunch of money and a whole family trip, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the things you think about in the city. It's still a great city, And Jeannie is in Orlando, and
Yeah.
it seems to be working for him because I think people go and then spend a day later. But it's a day commitment. It's different than Las Vegas.
So you're saying there's a fine line that you have to determine as to
Well,
whether
you
it's
have
going
to
be.
determine, yes,
You don't want to
what
have a city
works.
that's too attractive. But
Well, yeah, there's lots to do in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
But there's also, you can do it in short stints.
I understand.
That's just my thinking.
Yeah. Well, some years ago, I remember that a buddy of mine, Charlie McFarland, and David Fields have put on the Close-Up for Connoisseurs in Midland, Texas. They said, because we're going to have Close-Up and we're going to have it. I mean, why would you go to Midland for any reason unless it was on business? You know, it still is, you know, a small energy city. And they hosted this at the convention at the airport motel, and they had, you know, had Martin Nash, and they had Eugene Berger and Daryl and Michael Lamar and Roger Klaus and Heba Haba Al. I mean, it was just people. He knew that people were going to be coming there just for that. So my point is, it doesn't have to be the city.
No. That's true. The city doesn't have to be the outside, especially in the early days. That's a retreat. What you're describing is a retreat. I'm going away. It can be up in the mountains. Lock us in a hotel because I want to be locked in the room with all of these people.
Yeah.
And the stars of your convention are not rushing off to see Penn and Teller or Dave Copperfield at night.
I see your point.
Their entertainment is all there. Everything you do is right there. So these are just different ways of looking.
Abercorn-Dabra. I mean, look at Steve Daly's thing.
I know.
In Iowa.
I went and did that convention, and people
I've not
said,
been there
well,
yet.
how is Des Moines? I said, I have no idea. I went to the airport, got into the hotel.
Yeah.
2 days later, went back to the airport and flew home.
Heard
I
it's a
don't know
great
what the city
convention.
is. I said, well, Steve throws fun things.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
passionate. But anyway, your city, there's all these layers to think about in your city. Then there's the cost. How much does it cost? Not only how much does registration cost, how much does the hotel room cost? That's a big part of it. That's part of the formula of Magic Live. We charge more money for the registration, but we have a cheap hotel room.
That's right.
And so we get to spend that money on budget and do other things. If you have a $150 hotel room, that's a cost.
You got to think about the total cost that a
Total
registrant
cost.
is going to be.
Not only that cost, it's the cost
Transportation,
of
food.
what do you do for a living, and what time of year are you taking off, and what's it costing you? You don't throw a magician's convention the first week of December or the second week of December, because any magician earning their money, they're not going to be able to come to it.
That's right.
So
what about
cost.
weekday versus weekends?
Same problem. Yeah.
Okay.
You'll find out your hotels might be more expensive on the weekend, or like a 3-day weekend, like Labor Day weekend or whatever. Your hotels might be a little bit cheaper on that weekend.
Correct.
But your
That's why the JOM always had
families
theirs.
and stuff might not be able to go. It's
Yeah.
just, all I'm saying is there's a lot to think about.
I know that you're thinking about schooling, for example. That's why you
we
have
talk
yours.
about school. I keep moving it closer,
Yeah.
to the beginning of August.
So you're not
and
competing with the kids going back.
kids going back to school, they go
families.
back earlier and earlier now in certain cities. In other cities, they don't. So it's a moving target.
So are you looking at trying to target, and not just you, but do you think conventions in general are trying to target the families? I mean, I know that they're thinking about that as far as total cost, like you're thinking about. It's not just the registrant, but also the spouse and the family and everybody else maybe coming along to that city. But
Right.
I
I'll answer your question.
Go
I
ahead.
think that it's a pie.
Pecan pie?
And
I like pecan pie.
You like, okay, pecan pie, Scott. You are so weird. All right, pecan pie. And the convention market is your pie. So you divide it up. We talked about this when we were all building acts. The audience is the pie. And if you have long hair and a beard and you wear jeans, you've cut out part of the pie. There's a certain market that will not hire you because of your look.
That's right.
It's not fair, but it's
the way it
fact
is.
of life.
Sure, that's right.
And if my father called you up and you used improper English, if you said, well, Joe, he did this and ain't this and that, my dad wouldn't hire you. So that's a sliver of the pie missing. And our idea was, you want to develop a performance and an act and a look that plays to the most people, the biggest pieces of the pie.
Right.
And I think convention things the same way. If you're a small convention and you're after, like Fechter's,
Yes.
you're after that specific thing, Cadabra, you're after a very specific deal, then you have to concentrate on a sliver of the pie, and you have to go deep.
It's a
and
niche
make
within a niche. It really is.
It is, but you have to go depth in that. If you're Magic
do you do
Live, you're appealing to the whole pie much more. So it's a different feel of what you're trying to do.
You're more
there.
of a Harry Allen than a Craig Filicetti.
Well, okay.
I mean, you're kind of appealing to the generic and general magician as opposed to a specific piece, where Craig Filsetti has, the pro-mystic stuff, and so it's just for mentalism kind of stuff.
It's a very
So
narrow niche,
I'm
and
just
he
giving
has
another,
to go depth into that
right,
niche. And has
as
to
opposed to
bring
selling thumb
people-
tips to everybody, like
Exactly.
Stamp-
And Magic Live, I'm trying to I'm walking a couple lines. I always say Magic Live is a cross between a professional conference and a boat show. There are people that just come to see the new
dealers.
shiny objects.
Yeah,
and that's what they come to. Sure. And you know what? We need them because we need 1,600 people to pay the audio-visual budget that is actually more expensive than most conventions have their entire budget for, because we are at a certain standard. That's what we're known for, and to take the risks that we take and to achieve the business model that we've created.
Yes.
And so we need everybody there. So the person who just wants to see the new shiny object, they're there. And then the other person is, hey, I'm here to actually learn something that I can take home and make more money with. And so our convention is all over the board in that area. And that's set by design. That's what we try to do. So anyway, what C's were we up to?
You had cost. You had city and cost.
We've done city and cost. And now the next one is content.
Okay.
Content is very important. And it used to be content was just book the names, bring them in, let them do their thing. Okay. I don't think that works anymore because we've all seen so many of these people. So another
at other conventions.
Yeah. And so another area of like our approach is, what are we going to have them do? I can give you a list of names of people that are going to be at Magic Live, but you're going to be disappointed because they're not doing what you think they're going to be doing. They're going to be doing other things. And surprise people. And I always use Jack Goldfinger as an example. We booked Jack Goldfinger to do a convention of ours. And what would you think Jack would do? Well, maybe he'll do his old act. Maybe, but he's the entertainment director of the castle right now. I bet they're going to interview him and talk about how do you get booked at the Magic Castle and all of that kind of stuff. And, maybe you'll talk about the early days. And, he could talk about all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
You know what Jack did?
Did he do his card thing with Dove?
Nope. He did.
I don't remember.
Gene Anderson was hosting one of our general sessions, and Gene did the newspaper tear, and then told us the history of the newspaper tear.
And everybody did newspapers, and he did his.
He came out, and Gene mentioned that creating a trick like this that gets popular is like having a kid and seeing where they go and what they do. And here's one of my favorites. Jack came out and did his
to that music
to the stripper.
Right.
And what is that, 3 minutes long? And he walked off. That's all Jack did. So if you were coming there to see Jack Goldfinger talk about being the entertainment director of the Magic Castle, you would be disappointed.
So that's not one of the reasons, or that is one of the reasons that you don't like necessarily.
I don't tell.
Promote. Who's going to be there?
Because the biggest reason is surprise. It's just that simple. Magic is surprise, right?
Well, and that went back to the original concept of the magazine. So this way that you would turn the page of the magazine not knowing what's necessarily going to be on there, even though you could look at the table of contents.
Sure.
Yeah, and so you wanted each day to be different, kind of like the magazine. So I understand that.
Well, everything at the convention. And surprise is so important. And magicians are so bad at keeping surprises. And they don't want to be surprised.
No.
They do, but they don't. They want to... If you gave them a chance you want to look behind the curtain or just sit in front and watch the curtain. Or we'll all say, bragging, oh, we want to sit in front and watch the curtain. But secretly, oh, no, we want to get behind the curtains, find out how he did that. And
so when you have the two different seatings for the shows, you're always telling people, don't tell the people in the next show.
Don't tell anybody.
What's going on.
Oh, God, don't tell anybody. And we can feel it. We had one of the puppets from
Scotland?
Circus 1903.
Oh, yeah, the elephant,
the big giant elephant puppets.
With David Williamson.
Right, we were interviewing David Williamson, and he was showing some slides and some pictures, and we had brought in one of the puppets.
Yes.
Peanut, the baby one.
Yeah.
And so for the surprise was David Williamson says, really? Oh, yeah, that looks fantastic up there, David. And he says, oh, well, you want to see him? Peanut, get out here. And this elephant comes lumbering out. And in the first general session, you can listen to the audio. Whoa!
Yeah, I was in that. That was great.
It was great. Everybody jumped up. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Now you go to the afternoon. Hey, so you want to see him? Here's Peanut. Peanut comes out, and they all go.
Golf clap.
And you kind of go, wait.
What happened?
What happened to the surprise?
Oh, that's funny.
The surprise had been ruined. People had told enough people that, hey, Williamson, they bring one of the elephants out. Oh, God, you just want to look at these boards in this room. They're whiteboards all around this room with ideas and things like that. And we work all year long. And then somebody says, oh, by the way, they bring out the elephant. And it just ruins the surprise.
Sure.
So if I don't tell you who's on the show, You can't preview it.
Yeah.
You can't do anything.
So sometimes you shouldn't discuss the elephant in the room.
You shouldn't discuss the elephant. Well done. Exactly. So let's see. Content.
That was C, content.
And content
Includes.
used to be content includes everything else.
So it's not just the talent.
No. Content, your dealer's room is content.
Yeah, and your schedule.
Your schedule. To how much room do you leave?
Right.
Too
busy, not enough busy.
Not only who you bring in, what you have them do, and how you present what they do.
Isn't that a fine line? Because sometimes I've heard people say, "Man, I didn't have time to do anything," and on the other hand, it's like there wasn't enough.
I'm talking about the talent now.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm talking about you bring Goldfinger in.
Yeah.
What do you have them do? Just this thing. How do you frame that in to make that thing really cool and a moment? We call them, now it's arrogant, we call them Magic Live moments, but they're really aha moments. Mm-hmm. Aha moments are where you watch a guy talk about ambiguous objects and show slides of these objects that you turn them around.
Yeah.
For anybody that doesn't know this, if you've probably seen where the arrow is pointing to the right and you turn it 180 degrees and it's still pointing to the right. Mm-hmm. This guy invents these things from Japan.
Mm-hmm. The 3D models kind of thing.
Yeah, they're 3D. He calls them ambiguous objects. Mm-hmm. And he showed them on the screen. And a number of people sitting in the audience told me afterwards, they were saying to themselves, when this presentation's over, I'm going to the dealer's room. I'm going to find him and I'm going to buy one of those things. Mm-hmm. Well, at the very end of the event, Max Maven was hosting, and he says, oh, and by the way, if you would like one of those ambiguous objects, we have one for everybody out at the door. And you can hear the audience go, oh,
yeah.
It was that moment.
That Max was reading their minds.
Max was absolutely reading those minds, and I had read their minds 6 months before. And kind of stuff. So we're looking for those moments.
Yeah.
And that's all part of content.
Yeah.
But the way the curtains look on the stage, the way the seating is arranged, the theater that you build for the thing to be in, that's
lighting,
all part of content.
Music.
Sure, because some conventions put everybody in one big room, and that's great. You're all in the same room. And there's a positive to that whole thing. Everybody experiences. If a guy says something funny, everybody experiences it at one time. And then other convention models like ours, we build purpose designed theaters for close-up or for parlor. This year we built a parlor because we have a thrust stage. Mm-hmm. And you put a manipulation act like Guy Hollingworth, and they want to play upstage to protect their angles. And now the front row sitting there, and 25 feet away is Guy Hollingworth doing cards and billiard balls. And so we said, Guy, we've built a theater, and we want to put you there. And now Guy's standing there, and 10 feet away is the front row, and 35 feet away is the back row. Yeah. And it's all raked seating. And so we designed it all for angles. That's all part of content.
Yeah.
How you build all the program book.
Right.
Here's another part of content. If you run ads, what do your ads look like? What does your web page look like? All of that. Look, if you're a magician, when do you start making the sale? You start making the sale the minute the person finds out you're a magician. If you're at a party and you're drunk and you're doing stupid stuff and you find out, yeah, I'm a magician. Well, your sale is probably over. But how you carry yourself the minute they find out you're a magician. If they pick up the phone and call you, which probably nobody does these days, what's your outgoing message sound like? What do you sound like on the phone?
Right.
When they ask you what the price is, how do you respond? How matter of fact are you? These are called professional. But now it's, what does your website look like?
Right.
What is your message? What does your blog look like?
Yeah, you got
all
a
of that
video.
stuff. You're making your sale already long before you ever step out in front of that audience to perform. And so all of that we consider under the content. That's the C for content. Mm-hmm. And now the fourth one, community. Magic conventions are about community. Now, you can spend your efforts and find the right hotel, the right city, and you can spend your efforts and work down your budget to get your costs down. And you can spend all of your efforts building content. And imagine this is a magic act. Same thing. You're building your content. You're working out your pricing in the market. You want to be in the right market. Content. How do you create community? How do you create word of mouth? How do you create, I'm going to be there because all my friends are going to be there? And how do you get all your friends there? Mm-hmm. You cannot just sit down and create that. So as a convention planner, you have to basically create time in the schedule, situations where community forms. Mm-hmm. Community forms, and you can't control how it forms. You can't control what that opinion of their time is, how happy they are, who they're with. Do they have an opportunity to see that person? Et cetera, et cetera. Community is built. One of my favorite letters of all time was a guy, and if he's listening to this, please reach out and tell me because I've lost your name in the letter. And we used to do a thing, Josh Jay used to do a thing called Let's Talk About Tricks, and went 3 or 4 hours, and he brought up different people to teach tricks, but it was kind of a filler thing during the night. So if you didn't have other shows, you went here. And people hung out there at different amounts of time. And the guy said, I can do a couple card moves. I'm okay. I'm not great. I'm not in the big leagues. But I was standing there, and somebody was demonstrating something. I had my hands contorted all around the deck of cards, as we as magicians do.
Yes.
And the guy next to me leans over and says, what have you got? And I turned. It was Paul Gertner. And I showed him what I got. And Paul looked at it and said, I think he's got it. And he turns to his side and says, Bobby, it's Bobby Sheets. I think this guy's got it. And Bobby comes around and stands on the other side of me, the letter writer. And he said, look, I recognize I'm not in their league. But for that moment, we were just 3 guys trying to learn a card trick. And he said it was the greatest moment. And I said, that's the greatest Magic Live moment ever. And that's what, that's community.
Yeah.
And people come back for community. TOM has community, had it all those years.
PCAM.
Vectors has community.
Right.
Abbott's has community. IBM, S.A.M, they have community. And that's, to me, the base people that come to convention no matter what it is. IBM, there's certain people that come every single year to the IBM, every year to the S.A.M. We have a core group of people. But then to make a convention successful, you need the larger group. And you have to sell them. You have to convince them.
Well, you had that as a theme, not community, but you had friends as which is essentially the same thing as one of your themes one year.
Friends changed how we did business. We threw out, here's a theme, friends. And we did a couple things. Our little card game used 2 people.
Yeah.
And if you won a prize, you could bring a friend up with you, and they got a prize also. And we put some lectures together, like Kevin James and Gaetan Bloom together.
Yeah.
And we did a couple friends things. It wasn't over-the-top theme by any means. And I was planning on doing a digital convention. Where only a couple people came, like an EMC, at Central Magic Convention, Luis de Matos and Marco Tempest did over in Portugal.
Or Portugal, yeah.
And I was looking to do that instead of doing a convention every year. We do one of those for 1 or 2 years, and then we do a live convention, et cetera, et cetera. And I even talked about it.
I remember you and I talked about that.
And
for a while too.
After that Friends convention, so many people came up and said, I had so much fun with my friends this time. It was so nice seeing all my friends. I made new friends. The word friends was used over and over again. And it dawned on me, we don't need more internet. There's more internet magic than you and I, we could spend our lifetime on and still never get through it all.
True.
There's already internet hookups and times where people meet each other and, all of that. What we need is face-to-face, old school, sitting in a room with somebody and in the middle of the night doing a card trick for each other. And all of those moments. Don Wayne, nice compliment one year, said to me at the end of the convention, Stan, do you have any idea how many memories were created this weekend? And you go, wow, that's what we're in.
Yeah.
We're not in the convention throwing business. I was not in the magic publishing business. I didn't realize magazine publishing business. The Union Pacific back in the old days wasn't in the railroad business. They were in the moving people from place to place and moving things from place to place. And when a more efficient way of moving things from place to place came along, the railroads went down. Same with magazines. They went down. We were in the information business, and the internet was better at putting out information.
Faster.
Magic Live, we're in the experience business. We're in there giving you a moment that you'll remember forever. When we can put Channing Pollock on stage being interviewed by Lance Burton. That's a moment you're not going to see anywhere.
Right.
That's a moment you're going to go with. That feeling when we said, pick up your ambiguous object on your way out of the room, or when Peanut the Peanut, the thing runs out and you go, those are moments. Remember the expression, they'll remember how you made them feel. So that's our job. That's what we're looking to do. And that eventually builds community that will support you. Content you're always working on, community.
I think you had something also that you may have hit on and may not have realized that it has to do with some subliminal image that you had implanted. In other words, that they started talking about friends because you said to begin with, this is about friends. And so that was kind of what they thought. I've heard this before, whenever that you're doing close-up, before you do a card trick, say, after I'm finished, you're going to say, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Or you're going to want to tell your friends about this tomorrow. And so as soon as, instead of saying, wow, it's the most amazing thing I've seen. So you are planting a memory of what, because a lot of times when something unexpected happens, they don't know how to react. So if you have implanted in there that the theme is going to be such and such, that's what they're going to remember and talk about.
Sure. I'm absolutely sure there was a certain degree of that.
Yeah.
And I remember in a different life, I worked for Princess Cruises for 7-8 years on ships and on land. And one of the cruise ships, it was the Sun Princess. The cruise director called us all together at the beginning, and he said, we have excellent is the best rating you can get. He said, I want better than excellent.
Wow.
I want the Sun Princess to become the Super Sun Princess. So this week, we're going to use the word super. And they would walk up, hey, welcome to the Super Sun Princess, and our super entertainment tonight is such and such, and he did a super job, didn't he? And everybody used the word super.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the comment forms came in, and people had drawn an extra box and wrote super
on top of it.
On outside.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Wow, outside
and
the box.
So, yes, there is a planting
Wow.
of that.
Yeah.
And to a certain degree, you do want to tell people what you're going to do and make them appreciate. When we built that little close-up theater, we had an explanation of how we built the theater and all the trouble we went to, so that when you walk in, hopefully you appreciate it on a couple different levels. And it had to be the most expensive. You know, we had to build 2 of them because you couldn't fit everybody into one. They had shows had to overlap, and so more money was spent there than ever.
So those are the 4 seats. What would be the 5th one that you?
Oh,
said
well, Charlie Fry threw in. There's a 5th seat. Well, what is it? Crap. They come to see the new crap. And I said, I'm going to put that under content as a sub-C.
Sub-C.
Thank you, Charlie. But I think that's how people decide where they're going to go.
Okay.
They look at the city. Hey, if somebody threw a convention in Austin tomorrow, I want to see Esther's Follies.
Sure.
So I'm going to go to Austin. They throw a collector's convention here in Las Vegas because with your ticket, you get a tour of David Copperfield's museum.
Right.
So you take advantage of the city that you're in. And I don't move around. My convention doesn't move around. But if I was IBM or S.A.M., I would be picking destination cities for destination magic things. Ken Klosterman's collection, something like that.
Well, that's why that they have a committee actually that is in charge of going out and finding the new destinations and everything like that. So those are good tips for people who are going to be organizing. What about those who are going to be attending? You know, there are so many conventions. You think there are more conventions now than there were before? You think the same number? Are they growing, dwindling?
There was a time when I think when we started, everybody was saying, oh, God, the last thing we need is another convention. And in the magazine, you wrote about conventions. We had a convention calendar, and you hard-pressed finding a weekend that there wasn't a magic
That's
convention.
Exactly right.
So I think it's like anything else. If you move into a city and you want to become a magician, well, is there a famous magician in the city already that when the beauty pageant wants a judge and they want a magician as a judge, they're going to go to that person?
Sure.
Or is that missing in the community? Then there's a role you might be able to fill. Find a niche that you can fill. If you're going to be a restaurant magician, it's not a big deal if there's 20 other restaurant magicians in the city because your box is pretty small. Marvin Roy used to say, if you're going to stay within 40 miles, 50 miles, the old 40-miler idea,
right.
If you're going to make your entire living in this community, it's got some wonderful perks. You wake up in your own bed every morning. You see your family. You don't miss the soccer games always,
right.
Et cetera, et cetera. But you have to be a better marketer. You don't have to be as original as the rest of the world, but you have to be good marketing and good. You've got to get into the community and become a member of the community and get known as for all kinds of things that you do, not just performing your magic show. If, on the other hand, you want to get flown to Paris to be at the Lido, well, you better have something that the guy who's booking the Lido can't buy in Paris. And Marvin Roy's Electric, Mr. Electric is an act that you can do.
Right.
So it's the same with the convention. Look at the business, look at the thing and say, what niche is not filled? What's available there? We came on, keep in mind, I didn't come into this to become a convention. We were throwing a party to celebrate, and it was a one-time only, never to be repeated.
Why did you repeat it?
Well, a couple years later, this kind of stuff gets under your skin. And my mantra in life is better. How can I do something better? When I had to write a passion statement, a producer asked me to write a passion statement a few years back, 5-6 years ago. What's your passion statement? I said, what does that mean? What gets you up in the morning? What gets you out of bed? Where's your passion? And we in the magic world, we're lucky. We're lucky because we have a reason to get out of bed every morning. We're excited about something. Okay, so what's my passion? Well, gosh, my passion. One, thing? And I'm probably walking around mumbling to myself for a couple of days. My oldest daughter said to me, "What the heck are you? What's your problem right now?" And I said, "I have to write this passion statement." She just looks at me and says, "Well, that's pretty easy." What? Your passion is doing something better than it's ever been done before, even if you're the one who's done it before. And you go, God, how sick is that? But yes, that is my passion. Right. I love it. I love the way that theater was built and all the problems we had to solve to build that theater, to figure that out.
So fulfilling. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also love putting together a great show or booking this person and using them different. I love that ambiguous moment at the end when everybody gets one. I love those things, but I also love how our registration works. It's a challenge or something like that. So I'm constantly looking for better. And so Magic Live is built on that. So that I'm not a niche little convention. I'm built on experiment and trying to do something better.
But where we are right now as far as attendance, that it has kind of fallen off. And do you think that that is because of the change in discretionary income, because of the digital age of the internet that we're in, of having these other experiences? Are people not appreciating community the way that they used to because you can get some of that fulfillment through social media online?
Sure, you can get your community online. It's a different kind of community, which means...
But is that the shape of the future?
Well, the shape of the future is the same shape as the past. Find something where there's an opening and move into it. And so if these people can all find enough community or their little things, what are they missing? And go after what they're missing.
What can we give them that...
What can we give them that they can't?
Sure.
International Brotherhood of Magicians is not an organization. The people running it shouldn't think of it as, well, we're running an organization. It's an organization. Wait a minute. S.A.M, same thing. It's not an organization. It's a bunch of magicians that get something through their community of that organization. So again, you're not in the railroad business. You're in the moving of people business.
Right.
You're creating an involvement where these people feel
so
connected.
Take a step back, you're saying, and realize what you're trying.
Realign. Yeah, it's different now. Everything changes. The world is constantly changing, and so we have to be changing with it. And what are we about? So yes, people can go online and get everything. What can't they get? Give them that. They can go on and watch Jack Goldfinger do his act. But what can we have Jack Goldfinger do that is different? And that's
right.
Excuse me. That's the game. I think that's the game for any business you're in.
But do you think that the Essential Magic Conference, the EMC, that Luis D'Amatos have put together and done that as a 3-year thing, do you think that might be a future? Or I know he tried that as an experiment and had committed funds to make that a 3-year test. And I don't think, and each year it gained, I guess, in registration, but still didn't get to, I think, their expectations. But do you think that's something in the future, or are they going in a different direction? I mean, as far as an online convention?
I don't know of an online convention that's successful. I don't think anybody could have done it better than Luis and Marco did. I think they're, by hindsight, we can all say, oh, what if you'd done this? It might have been better. This might have been better, and everything else. But
so you don't think that's necessarily the future, online conventions?
Oh, not at all.
Okay.
I think, people that have reinvented themselves successfully, Madonna, other artists,
Lady Gaga,
and David Copperfield.
Good point.
David Copperfield reinvented. He
doesn't have the wind blowing in his hair. They did.
No, he's changed in everything.
Well, we're getting older. You should, adapt.
Well, absolutely. Everybody should adapt, but he's also adapting to the market. So he does mega trick, and then what does he do?
Yeah,
tears up a baseball card, and he hangs a whole special on a baseball card.
Yeah,
he just took a right-hand turn and went in a totally different direction. And so I think as a convention, we look for that. We look for that area that you say, wow. And that's the secret for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's conventions are now passé and nobody wants to go to them anymore, any more than I think young people aren't reading. No, they're reading. They're just doing it a different way. Somebody said magic clubs are dwindling. Yeah, well, I know of a magic club in Las Vegas and say,
growing.
which one? And I said, you wouldn't know it. It's a bunch of guys that get together about once a week. They have pizza and they play magic challenge games and war games, and they will help each other and they talk each other about the act. What is that? That's a magic club. They're not part of the S.A.M. or the IBM. And if I was the IBM and the S.A.M., I'd want to go to that club and find out what's working. I went to Magic in the Rockies because 10 different people told me it was the most friendly convention they'd ever been to. to.
Yes.
And I went to that convention to find out why it was so friendly.
And?
Oh, well, they did some things that were amazing. I mean, when you're waiting in line for registration, the spouses had baked cookies and all kinds of stuff, and you could have a cookie and this and everything. And they had lunches where everybody sat at a table, and it was a table for 8. So our 4 people sat down, and 4 people we'd never met before sat down, and we're talking.
And they had placemats with the performers? Yeah.
Performers and schedule. They did a couple other things, like everybody got one front row ticket for one event at the convention, and you could trade it and play. It was a way of connecting people and talking with people and everything. Now, most of those ideas don't scale up. We can't
for 1,600 people.
We can't take 1,600 people to lunch. We don't have a room where all 1,600 people fit. It's our dealer room, and we have to tear it apart to get everybody into the party that night. So we have different challenges, but it doesn't change the need for that friendliness. Come on, conventions should be fun, should be friendly, and they should be informative. I mean, that's what we're going there for. And everybody puts that order in whatever they want and everything. And the 4 C's, by the way, I asked a different convention, which of these 4 C's is the most important? And he said, well, cost. Magicians are cheap. Cost is the most important thing. I disagree. Cost is number 4 on my list, because I think if you give people quality, they're happy to pay for it. Yeah, quality. You bet. But they're happy to pay for it. And you just have to give them quality. You have to give them what it is that they want. It's not just what you think it should be. You have to get down and find out what they're doing and what are people doing. And that's the same whether you're a magician in a market or you work for a company and you know.
Well, ultimately, there is a consumer at the end of every business day and every business. And even though that conventions, some look at them as a business. I mean, yours is a thing, that you work all year towards, that they should be considered. I mean, even churches are businesses. Everything, is a business. And so who are your clients? In this case, it's the registrants and their families. And it goes back to community and what would get them there. And those 4 C's, I think, are just some great ideas. But ultimately, it comes down to people who want to be with each other rather than on social media.
And that's why I have faith
that's going to continue to.
The conventions are going to be continuing. They might not look like our conventions now, but magicians are still going to be getting together 100 years from now. And chances are, I think it's going to be face-to-face. Who knows? Maybe someone will find an internet way of doing this where you really feel connected.
Right.
But there's nothing better than that guy standing there trying to learn a card trick, and 2 of his idols are now standing next to him, and he got to spend time with them on a level playing field. You're going to say that didn't make his convention? He was writing to me to tell me that it made his convention. And so that's all we have to do. We have to look at the business that way.
You were talking about people also who are being seen at other conventions, or obviously they can be seen on the internet. As far as if you want to go see this person's performance, you can watch YouTube video usually of them or find something about them, or they all have websites, et cetera, et cetera. So in that case, that it's getting harder and harder to find somebody that you want to go and see. You made that point. But the magicians who are performers who want to get booked for conventions, how do they get booked for those others in particular, since we're speaking to you about your convention? I mean, you're the elephant, in, speaking of the elephant, I guess, in the convention market. Well, I mean, 1,600 people. I mean, that's the largest convention outside of FISM, basically.
Blackpool.
Blackpool. No, I'm getting there. Blackpool is like, over 3,500 people or whatever. And then it's
Blackpool
FISM.
To me.
And that's got to be, it is.
No, I'm impressed. I'm just saying, I don't understand how it all works, but it does.
It does, year after year.
Okay, wait a minute. There's a perfect example of community. People go to Blackpool every year. On the continent and in England, everybody goes to Blackpool. So you just say it's what is.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So as far as getting booked. How would one get to be booked at other conventions? But since we're talking to you, how did they get booked for Magic Live?
All right. Then I'm going to give you, many years ago at a Lance Burton teen weekend, they were all having lunch with these kids. Everybody was at a table. One professional magician was at a table with kids.
Right.
And they were asking some questions. And one of the questions was, what's the single piece of advice you would offer to an up-and-coming magician? And I think Fielding West jumped up and said, don't marry your assistant. And we all laughed, and he's looking around going, what?
Really?
No, I'm serious. Don't marry.
Yeah.
And I think Billy McComb answered it well, that if you... just because you made money this year doesn't mean you make money next year. So First dollar you make, invest a percentage of it, and do that constantly. He said, I bought 2 houses when I was younger, and those houses have bailed me out of bad financial times a couple times. So it was good advice. And then they moved on to another question, and I was sitting there thinking, what would have my advice been? And the tough part of the question was single piece of advice. So I called a number of magicians in the room, and they had wonderful advice. Matt King, Jeff McBride, Lance Burton. They had great advice, but I didn't have one for me. And that sent me off on a hunt for the best advice. Ultimately, that was the talk I did at the Essential Magic Conference, and then developed it on and on. And the single piece of advice I came away with,
because you had number 1 and you had all these numbers.
All these numbers and random thing. Yeah, talk about not having a speech written. Here's my speech. It's on index cards. First, let me shuffle them. All right, now let's get started. It wasn't quite that way, but it was damn close to that. Anyway, my one single piece of advice was look at the job through the client's eyes. And I think it's a life thing. And it's simply this. You want a bank loan? Think a little bit like a banker. What's the person on the other side of the desk looking for? What are they going to do?
Solvency.
Of course, all kinds of things. Make your little checklist and try to check off that box. You want to get your name in a local newspaper or a local magazine. You want an article about you because you're trying to sell magic shows.
Right.
Think like an editor. There's somebody out there that's trying to fill that box every week.
Every week.
That's their job. They're desperately looking. When I was a kid, I looked through the newspaper.
Yeah.
So you got to read the newspaper. You got to understand it. And I read through the newspaper, and there was a column on pets. Well, I had some doves and a rabbit in my act, so I wrote up a little story called My Pets and Partners in Business.
Yeah.
And I sent it in to the guy. And pretty soon I get a call from the editor of the Sunday section. It says, hey, this guy sent me these over here. We think it's pretty cool. We want to make it a story in our Sunday feature. You're kidding me. Go down and shoot some pictures, got the whole thing, and then I sit back, and every Sunday I run out to the newspaper. It's not there, it's not there, it's not there, it's not there. And about 6 weeks later, I'm thinking, I guess that didn't work. And the guy calls up and says, hey, we have a spot open. Can you come back, shoot a color picture for cover?
Wow.
So I was on the cover of the magazine because I read the newspaper, the cover of the Sunday section, because I looked through it. I got smarter about what's in that newspaper that might want to use me. So all of that's the same. You wanted to get on the cover of Magic Magazine, think like an editor of Magic Magazine would think. You want to get booked at Magic Live? Okay, first thing is to get smart. I can't tell you how many people say, hey, I'd be perfect for your convention. How do you know that? You've never been to my convention. And by the way they ask and the things they bring to me, it's obvious they don't have a clue.
Just like going to a restaurant. If you're a restaurant magician going in, have you ever eaten here? Well, no. Then how do you know our clientele?
You don't even know what our food's like, our clientele, or anything else.
Right.
If you come to me,
good point,
and you say, I've got my lecture for 2020.
They'll love it.
My brand new lecture that I'm going to be doing everywhere. I'd love to do it at Magic Live.
Yeah.
You've just lost the gig. Because I don't want your signature lecture. Remember? Your signature lecture can be done anywhere.
I got that on Penguin Lecture right now.
Or whatever. I need you to be doing something. I need you to call me up and say, hey, I've been thinking about doing this. I've never done it anywhere before.
I'm known for this, but I'm thinking about going outside the box.
I'm sure your signature thing is fantastic. Sure. But it's probably not as good as you think it is. But it's probably really good. And if you come to me, I'm not interested in your signature thing. I'm interested in something else. If you come to me and you say, hey, guess what? I can do close-up, and I can do a lecture, and I can do stage. Do you know we had, I think it's 55 or 56 presenters and performers last year at Magic Live, more than probably any other convention.
Yeah.
And out of that, I think 4 or 5 did 2 things. Nobody did 3. Nobody has ever done 3. So for me, another convention that has a limited budget would be saying, oh, that's perfect.
They're looking for a triple threat.
But what you're doing when you write me is you're showing me you don't know anything about my convention, that I don't do that and anything else. And so my advice to somebody who wants to get booked at Magic Live, okay, maybe it sounds like I'm selling you. Come to Magic Live. Attend Magic Live. And figure out as you sit there, you know what I could do for them? You know what I could present them that would make them look really good, et cetera. It's looking at the job through the other person's eyes. And if you can't come to it, well, damn it, read the articles about it. Find out from other people what makes Stan tick, what makes that thing happen. So I think it's the same with any convention. If you're going to Fector's, don't pitch them on your stage act. I don't think it's going to work.
Right.
I've never been to Fechter's.
It's all close up, yeah, obviously.
It's all close up.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you go to Cadabra, don't take your X-rated midnight show there.
But if you got a very good point on both those. But if you're going to be going to a regular convention and you are a triple threat where you can do close up and stage and lecture and maybe even be a dealer, that they want to, because they have the limited budget, they could say, okay, well, we could use you. But that's different from your convention.
Well, it is.
We need to look at every convention through their organizer's eyes.
Every job is
Gotcha.
different.
Gotcha.
Every restaurant you're trying to pitch to become a restaurant magician is different. And do they have a 2-hour wait on Saturday night, or do they don't have any wait on Saturday night? Well, you got to pitch them differently.
If you're in the business world and you're going up for an interview, you have to know the company. You look at their stock and kind of see what's happening within their division and their departments and whatever else. And here's why I want the job. Not just my experience, but I know your job and what your needs are, and I'm the right person for you.
The last time we did a search for an art director, it was interesting. We probably interviewed 5 people, and you could tell who had looked us up online and knew all about us and probably had gotten a copy. One guy had gone to a magic shop and got a copy of Magic Magazine and looked it over.
Interesting.
Why? Well, because I think that's how you get booked.
That's where I've gotten trade show jobs, because whenever I go and talk about them, because I've already done all the research, know everything that's on their website, and so I can kind of regurgitate back to them and maybe do a trick or something that has to do with that. So you have to research. And that's a very good point. Not just yours, but other conventions wherever you're going to work.
I think it's also important to recognize that as lecturers or as performers, we don't fit everywhere. Mm-hmm. We like to say, "Oh, it'll be great for your show." Well, you don't know that. You don't fit. Yeah. You don't know what I'm thinking. And I always put on whenever I ask anybody, "Can I work your convention?" If you think I would fit, what are you trying? I don't know what you're trying to do, but if you think I would fit, I'd love to work your convention.
Right.
And sometimes it did fit, sometimes it doesn't fit, and I can't tell you how many people get kind of pissed off at me that, "What do you mean I'm not good enough for your convention?" I'm not saying you're not good enough for my convention. When we built that close-up theater,
yeah.
So all the people were raised up like a surgical theater, looking down onto the table. The front row could put their drinks on the table.
Yes.
That's how close it was.
Right.
Guess what? All the magicians we were looking at to work in the theater
didn't like it?
No, they had their hands up. Oh. Because as a close-up magician, you can't work on a table that often. You're working for 20 people.
Yes.
You're working parlor.
Sure.
So these guys have all developed acts where they work up. And we had to grab Bob Sheets and say, "Do the 3-shell game." Okay, why do we want Bob Sheets doing it? Because it's on the table. We built an entire theater to accent the table.
Yes.
And magicians aren't on the table. And so we had to find some magicians who could do tricks on the table to take advantage of the room to set the show aside from every other show you've seen at the convention, because that's what makes your business a success.
Right.
The challenges are fun. Once you head down the road, once you commit to do something better than it's ever been done, and you're willing to look at it as how do you do it? How do you do it artistically? And what's the experience for the customer? Boy, it starts bouncing back and forth. But it's fun. That to me, doing the same thing again, why would I want to do that? That's not fun.
No.
Not fun at all.
I've already done that. Well, I think that was why that Jeff Hostetler finally got tired of the Magi Fest and the Redcoats, because they were doing the same formula year after year after year for however many years, and they kind of turned it over then. But it was the same. Now, Josh J. and Andy have taken it in a completely different direction, and they're still reinventing every year and doing things differently. And I'm not saying that it was wrong, because Jeff had really, and his team really built a great convention.
They did.
Phenomenal.
I worked at it. Yeah, it was a good convention, and well run, and a bunch of people that don't go to other conventions.
Only to that. Well, you can say it about every convention. People go only TAOM or PCAM or whatever it is. There are those. But I think that continued to grow, partially because there was a comfortable feeling, that you expect to come back and see some of the same types of things.
Well, you're on a bit of a slippery slope. And I'm lucky. I'm a dictator. I decide what goes
you can
into
afford
Magic
to be a dictator.
Live.
Yes, it's your party.
After 2018, and our last night show went flying off the track spectacularly.
Have you got any good stories about that?
Oh, my God, do I have good stories about that. And it went off, and you shoved a microphone in my face, and I was feeling about as low as I could feel.
I remember that.
I walked through the party from one end of the party to the other, and nobody made eye contact with me. And usually it's, "Hey, Stan, how's it going? Hey, can I get a picture? Would you sign my book? Something." No, nobody even looked at me.
That's because you fell off the tightrope.
Well, I had fallen off the tightrope and splattered.
And no net.
I think splattered. Right. It was a spectacular failure, something that I went back and analyzed, which is another. Let's come back to that in a second. But anyway, after that, you shoved a microphone in my face, and what? Okay, this is embarrassing. Where was I going with this? What was I saying?
Well, we were talking about experiences that may be different, and I was talking about.
Okay, we've lost it, haven't we? Yeah, between the two of us, folks, we're 560 years old here, and we haven't gotten this
in dog years.
I'm
at least.
I'm going to jump over, go off to a side
okay.
thing on that, is because something really important. I was thinking about this the other day. Failure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that show was a failure. No question about it. It was a failure. 5 minutes to 9 o'clock that night, people were telling me this is a really good convention. 1 hour and 15 minutes later, people are not looking at me in the eye. And it's a disaster. And people are going on the internet and saying the worst convention ever, a total waste of time. I'm not even going to come back next year. I'm going to go on vacation to Aruba instead, or whatever the hell people were saying. And all those people that said that registered in the first 30 minutes, by the way, when we opened up. And I just want to go, what do I do about this? My son looks at me and says, you get off the internet.
Stop reading your own reviews.
Right, because there's no chance that I'm going to believe my reviews. It's important when you fail. Now, by the way, that's not if you fail. When you fail. Because if you're going to do anything, you're going to fail.
In life.
Mark Randall from Adobe last year and talked with us, and he talked about your your failure rate can't be too low. Because if your failure rate's too low, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah.
So if you have a 2%, 1% failure rate, well, you're not pushing the envelope here, folks.
Yeah, you're just doing things within your comfort range.
However, it hurts. Failure still hurts. And you have to keep reminding yourself, failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is a part of success. It is a step in the process. But when you fail, there's two critical things that you have to do right afterwards. Number one, you've got to analyze it. You've got to understand, where did it go wrong? And when you shoved a microphone in my face that night, I had no idea where it went wrong. I hadn't seen the show yet.
Okay.
You know,
you
and
just
everything.
kind of heard things.
No, I heard things. And when you walk through the room and no one looks at you, you get a feeling pretty quick. You are not the most popular person in the room.
Well, you were
tonight.
honest about it. I remember when we were talking.
Well, there's no
you said,
reason.
well, things go wrong.
Yeah, you know what? I think what we talked about was a stew, and I put a recipe. I got a recipe.
Yes.
And I got the best ingredients. I put them in there, and I followed the recipe, and I put it on there. And you know what? Sometimes that stew comes out tasting better than it should have. That happens to me a lot at Magic Live, and I get credit for that.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
And then sometimes, you know what? It should have tasted a lot better than this, and it tastes awful. Yeah. And you know what? I get blamed for that. And I don't mind getting blamed because I get credit on one hand and blame on the other hand. And it's part of the job. But anyway, you have to analyze what went wrong. You have to really understand, where were we wrong on that night's show? My premise of that by the end of the convention, people are tired of magic and they're ready to see some more variety and crazy and outside stuff. Let's make the show crazy and fun. It didn't work so well.
Yeah.
And number two, it wasn't just me. There were a few acts on the show that I think made bad decisions in things they said and how they did them. And but that's still my fault. The old joke, no, it's not your fault. I picked you.
Yeah.
Well, it's true.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. I picked it. And then three, something we will tie into the internet here. The audience took part. People went on Facebook during the show and said this was awful. In the middle of the show, in the middle of somebody's act, and they're on Facebook telling how bad it is. Now, are you going to tell me nobody involved in the show saw that Facebook
Sure
page?
they did. Of course
they did. By the second show, I watched my performers on the second show, and they had a slightly different attitude than they did on the first show. I don't think they were that tired.
Yeah.
I think that they realized this wasn't working, and it was a downward spiral and stuff. So all three of us played into that thing. My name's on it, so yeah, you know what? I take the blame. And I'm not saying they shouldn't complain that this show was awful. I don't think they should do it in the middle of the show. I don't think they should do it in somebody's act. But you know what? They paid their money.
But Copperfield and others, I know Murray Sawchuk and others will encourage people. Go ahead and tweet, and send out whatever during the show.
I know, but I just look at it and say, look, you paid your money.
Yeah.
And so if you don't like what you got for your money, you have every right in the world to say it and say it on Facebook and everything else. Sure. I do think if you said this was a piece of crap, I'm never coming back, and then 3 months later you're the first person to sign up, you owe me another post at that point, I think.
Yeah.
All that. But my one thing, though, for audiences coming in today would just be simply this. I'm fine you have stones And if you feel like you should throw them. Leave the stones at the door. Give us a chance to have the whole show. And your stones will be waiting for you when you walk out.
Okay.
Yeah, give us a chance to build what we were going to build. And if you didn't like it at the end, pick up your stones and fire them full force.
Yeah.
Get a catapult if you want.
You're in a glass house.
So. We live, of course we do. And as a magician, it's the same way.
Yeah.
If you step on the stage and people pay you to be there, I think they have the right to say whether they like it or don't like it.
Right.
And they don't have to be a professional magician to say it. You know what?
They can
I
be
go to the
trolls.
movies. I don't like it. I've never made a movie, but I'll tell somebody that movie sucked. I don't have to be a movie maker to do that. You know, it's just that simple. Now, the second thing you do when you fail, so you analyze it and you understand it really well. And the second thing you do that when you fail is you beat yourself up a little bit and then you get up again and you brush it off. Because everybody who's been a success can tell you about the failure before their success. Walt Disney went bankrupt before he got the second studio.
Right.
And you know, everybody's got that story.
Sure.
And so those are the two things. Now, here's what I think people miss. When you have a success, when that stew tastes better than it really deserved to taste and it was over the top,
right.
Two important things you got to do. And the first one is dissect it and find out why. Why was that successful? Do not assume, yep, I'm a genius. Yeah, that's when we're the big dog. Magic Live is the big dog right now. But if we start thinking we're the big dog and start acting like we're the big dog.
Believing your own press.
Yeah, there's a bigger dog growing right now coming on the scene that we don't know about in a year or two is going to take over.
Yeah.
And so I'm the naysayer. I'm trust me, you can't tell me anything about this convention. Well, I'm sure somebody can. But for the most part, I'll tell you what was wrong with that show, and I'll tell you what was wrong with that show, and I'll tell you stuff about this show you thought was great, and I'll tell you all the things that were wrong about it.
Yeah.
So it's important with a success that you still analyze it. Why did people like that show? What was important about it? What was good about it? And just like you would this failure. And then the second thing that's really important is, you hit a big home run. Okay, take a short victory lap.
Yeah.
And then step down. When you fail, you have to step back up and take another swing at it. And when you win, take a victory lap and then step down. Don't believe that and dismiss it. And now start at the bottom again and say, how do I build something better? How do I build it better? Not that, hey, we're better. Magic Live is not better. We strive to be better. And you know what? In some ways, Magic Live is much easier than throwing an S.A.M. or IBM or anything else because they have organizations and they're part-time people.
Right.
I can wake up every morning and dream about it. I can overthink this convention to whole new levels. In fact, I've always thought that should be the subtitle. Magic Live, overthought for your enjoyment. You know? But those failure is an important thing, to it. So after that show, I watched the video of both the shows. I talked to the people.
Yeah.
I talked to acts later that said, my acts never died like that. I don't know what happened. I've never gotten that kind of reaction. There's an opening joke. I don't know what happened. And I said, well, let's watch the video. I'll tell you what happened.
Yeah.
I think I know what happened. But that's how I'm a student of this stuff.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I know we covered a whole lot of territory over here. Are there some things perhaps about conventions that you think we might have overlooked or that you would like to maybe talk about or let people know, particularly for not just registrants, but for organizers?
So.
And
I think we underestimate quality. I think that I'm back to that better word. When a few years back, Taschen, the book company, put out the big Taschen book.
Beautiful. Several books.
Beautiful book.
Yeah.
Same year, The Prestige, or right around there, the Prestige movie came out.
Right.
Later we had
The Illusionist.
The Illusionist, and we had Now You See Me, and a Derek Delgadio show comes on, and all the celebrities in the world are looking at wonderful magic. The Magic Castle, when it's on its game, is these are quality things, and it's the perception of magic. The perception of magic is what we're up against, because if you walk down the street and say, "Name a magician," or "What do you think of when you think of a magician?" It's not always going to be good.
That's true.
It's not always going to be good.
There are a lot of memes and...
you get into sitcoms or something and they have a magician. Well, he's in a bad tuxedo. First of all, it's a he.
Yeah.
Overweight he. Probably an overweight white he.
Yeah.
Older. Bad haircut. Bad tuxedo. Yeah. And the tricks don't work.
Yeah.
And everything. And you say, that's a shame. Why don't we have the Lance Burton? Or why don't we have these other elegant things or quality? So what happens is when you see a Taschen book, wow, Look at the passion poured into this. Look at how artistic this is done. You see a movie and you watch that magician in The Prestige and the passion that they went after each other in this thing.
Yeah.
Or you see a Derek Delgadio and he tells you a story, and it's not Once Upon a Time or On My Last Trip in India. No, he's talking about himself and unveiling portions of himself. And you're walking out of there going, I don't know whether I like the magic better or the story better. Or Ricky Jay was that way.
Right.
You know, on the STEM was more stories than 52 Assistants. I liked it better. You know, I thought it was fantastic because Ricky was a master storyteller.
Right.
But the point being is that raises the bar to magic. And the people that see that Taschen book or the people that see that movie that shows a passionate character inside of it, they're more likely to say yes when the magician wants to step up to their table at the restaurant. They're more likely then if the magician is good at the restaurant, they're more likely to invite a magician or two to come to their private parties. And they're more likely to buy a ticket to a magic theater in town or a touring magic show or come to Las Vegas and drop $100 to see David Copperfield.
Right.
They're more likely to do that. And that's it's what
If you had a good experience, you want another good experience.
of course
and vice
you do.
Versa, if you had a bad one, you
And
don't.
I don't think people walk down the strip and suddenly say, I'm going to drop $100 on David Copperfield. They have some opinion of magic before they do. So there's a trickle-up theory going on here. And I think it's important. And I think at the bottom, when somebody says, oh, I just do kids shows.
Yeah, you're
really? How well do you do kids shows? How well is the experience? Because our art depends upon it.
Yes.
And chances are, many of those kids have never seen a magician before. So I just think quality is just so important.
Paramount. Yeah.
Paramount to our art of showing people that we're not just goofballs.
Right.
We're real people with real passions and real love for this, and we dedicate ourselves to it for good reason. And get off the how'd you do it crap and get away from, putting all the emphasis, because the guy who told me he was doing linking rubber bands and the crowd's watching, and one guy's over there checking his messages. He's not interested.
Right.
Yeah. And that guy came up to him afterwards and he holds up his phone and he shows them.
He's taking photos.
No.
Oh.
He had searched linking rubber bands on the internet, and he says he waited until the people had left.
Yeah.
And he comes up to the magician. He says, by the way, are you using this method? Is this what you're doing?
Huh.
What do you do at that point? Do you berate him? Do you make an enemy out of him? Or do you say, let me see that?
No. Let's
you know
help
what?
you. Yeah.
Hey, no, I'm not using that exact method, but it's pretty darn close.
And then you can actually make that a teachable moment.
Yeah, and you have a friend.
Yes.
And that's how we all got into magic.
Right.
We wanted to see how something was done. But we have to take the emphasis off from it, and somewhere in all of this, make the emphasis about quality and about that we're an art. And if we start treating ourselves like an art, maybe the world will treat us like an art.
Wow, that's well said. It's probably a good way to close this then as well. Of course, we've talked about before.
Because my cherry Coke can is empty.
It's called the Magic Word Podcast, and we've talked a lot about passion and your passion statement. What would be You've told me what your passion statement is.
You used to always say the one word, and you've wussed off that,
I
by
have.
the way, Mr. Wells.
I've
You've
expanded.
given people
A little more
outs.
latitude.
And I think one word's better. I think
Which
it's more
would be?
challenging. It's very simple. Better.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very simple.
Very good.
And
Thank
by the
you.
way,
yes,
I am not saying we do it better. I'm saying we're striving to do it better. That's all.
as everyone should.
I think everybody should strive. We're not all going to get it.
Each day wake up to be better
Better.
than yesterday.
Okay.
So,
And do me one favor.
no, I'm not. I'm going to say it.
No, you're not going to
Yes,
say
I am
it.
gonna
You're
say
gonna
it.
say it. God, you're
So,
such a...
the
God,
Magic Word Podcast.
Ladies
That
and
was
gentlemen.
Stan Allen.
Hey, this is the Stan Allen Magic Word Podcast. And how would it sound if I said, this is Stanley Out, or Stanny Out, or Stan the Man?
See,
it would sound
you
so
gotta find
corny
your own
and click.
catchphrase. You got to find.
Catchphrase. Maybe I don't have to find a catchphrase, Scott.
Well, you can't
Maybe-
use mine.
I
It just
can't
doesn't
use
say-
Scotty Out.
No, because
trust
mine-
me, I'm
mine-
not going to use that.
That's going on my tombstone, and I don't mean my pizza.
Do you want that sooner? Because we can arrange this, Scott. If
You know
you'd
a
like.
guy. We are here in Vegas.
Yeah.
So Magic Word Podcast. That was my chief.
Okay.
Stan Allen. Scotty out. Well, that was some fun. So thank you very much, Stan. I appreciate you being my guest here this week on this episode of the Magic Word Podcast. And I don't know what conventions you listeners are planning to attend this year, but wherever you reside, wherever in the world, I know there has to be a convention somewhere near you sometime soon. And if you have not yet attended a magic convention, I highly recommend that you do so because it's the best way of doing magic. I mean, I've always said that a magician who's not working is only fooling himself. And so if you're sitting home and perhaps producing some YouTube videos or something, you're really not seeing the other side of it. You're not really getting to communicate physically with other magicians. And the best place to do that, I think, would be at your local club magic meetings. And if you don't attend there or you don't have one nearby, then you need to travel to one of these convention cities where they're going to be hosting a magic convention. I highly recommend it. So much fun. Some of my best friends in life I have met at magic conventions, and I look forward every year of getting a chance to go back and seeing these people. And the more conventions I attend, the more friends I get. And so I hope that in the future that you'll come up to me if you happen to see me at a convention and you say, hey, this is my first convention and I was listening to this podcast and thought I would attend, and it's great to see you here. And I'm having a great time because I know you will. It is just a lot of fun. You'll learn a lot, and you'll want to attend future conventions as well. And if it gets to be kind of expensive, I know that some of the organizers have ways of working things out. Perhaps if it helping you to find a room. I know that Genie Convention, for an example, on their Genie Forum has a roommate finder. So if you want to share a room, that will help defray some of your costs. And even some of the organizers will recognize that if you can't afford a registration price and you are legitimately in financial need, that they will waive that registration rate just to allow you to come in. And I think after you do that, you'll learn a lot, become a better magician, and then you'll be able to earn more to come back to the next year's convention. Well, anyhow, I do hope that you get to attend a convention sometime here this year. We're early enough in the year to start looking at the conventions, and in fact, if you'll go to the magicwordpodcast.com, there is a tab there that says Magic Convention Guide, and if you'll click on that, you'll see all the conventions that I'm aware of that are going on around the world, not just in the U.S. So, in fact, if you know of a convention that is not listed there, please contact me. I'm Scott at themagicwordpodcast.com, and let me know about the information about where your convention is going to be and the date of it and also the website. And I'll be glad to post that for free on the convention guide there. So I think that's pretty much a wrap here for this week. And so until next week, stay well, get booked, and treat what you do as an art. And maybe the world will recognize what we do is an art. This is Scotty out.